Sunday, Sunday, Sunday. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another episode of True Story Live. Tonight's episode, For the Life of Me, Part 5, I Walk with Ghosts. Intriguing. It's going to be another exciting episode. Back to the series that Glenn has been writing. And super excited to, I'll leave it for Nez to use her phrase, but I like it a lot. So I'll just say I'm excited to dive into the topic and see what we come out with and to have these discussions. And I'm always excited about it. Excuse me, thank you for everyone that is listening. Even if you're not involved in the chat, we do invite you to come in and enjoy the camaraderie and the discussions in the chat, but we're glad that you're here. So thanks for listening. That invitation is always open. All right. As usual, for those listening for the first time, we'll introduce the panel. My name is Jason. I'm the host of the broadcast. And with me, I have an amazing panel. And I'll introduce them one by one so they get a chance to say hello. And I'll start with Marisa of the Nez Lover channel. Let's hear from her. Say hello to the peoples for us.
Well, thank you, Jason. Hello to the peoples. Welcome to True Story Live here on Sunday. Yes, Glenn's cooked up another installment in his ongoing series, and I'm looking forward to I'm doing air quotes that you can't see, hip deep into the discussion. I can't wait. Thank you, everybody, for being here. I will be sharing a few links of some friends of mine as they come in that I know they're okay with that. If you want your link shared, please let me know. If you don't want your link shared, please also let us know. And if you're so moved, please share the stream out on your social media. And I can't wait to get started. Looking forward to a great discussion.
Fantastic. And for those of you that have not visited Marisa's channel, it's Nez Lover, and it is easily found on YouTube. There's nothing like it out there. And she does art and sings and has special guests. Most of the time, at least on the weekend, it is my incredible wife, Jen, and they do art together, and it's wonderful. So if you're into that sort of thing, even if you're not, go give it a look-see and talk to the people in the chat. A lot of interesting and wonderful folks visit in their chat over there as well. And a lot of them have come over to listen to True Story Live, which we very much appreciate, and they have become part of our family here, which is wonderful. So definitely do yourselves a favor. And like she said, she'll put some links in there for you. Also coming up, I just want to mention this, and Marisa can talk about it later. I'm sure she'll post the link in there for Scully's House of. I always forget the rest of that. Scully's House of
Thrillers.
Thrillers. I keep wanting to say horrors, but it's not horrors. It's thrillers. House of Thrillers. Okay. They're doing Shawshank, a live reading of the Shawshank Redemption. There's also some other folks that are part of the TSL family that will be in there, and maybe we'll see them tonight. We'll talk more about that toward the end. But definitely we want to go over and watch that performance. All right. So let's hear from my amazing wife, Jen. Jennifer, take a minute to say hello to the people, please.
Howdy, people. Great to be here. I'm kind of tired. So if at any point in the write-up, reading, or discussion you hear snoring, it is not because you guys are boring or the write-up is bad or the company sucks. Right. It's just I've had a really long weekend. I'm really tired.
Yeah. Why don't you briefly, if you feel up to it, why don't you just share what you did over the weekend?
Yeah. So Shannon is Jason and I's coach with this program that we've been doing, and have lost a lot of weight. It's been incredibly successful. But my coach, Shannon, his sister, invited me to go to a convention that the company was putting on in Atlanta, Georgia. And I was very reluctant.
Yeah.
I even said to her, if I agree to this, is there, some catch that you want me to become a coach and I'm going to feel obligated to become a coach because I'm going to this thing and y'all are paying for half of it, And she said, absolutely not. And there was no pressure. And I just have been very socially isolated since I left my last marriage. And part of that, I think, is from being so deceived and hurt
Yeah.
And being in a place where I kind of didn't trust myself and I didn't trust other people.
Mhm.
Like I just have run into a lot of people with ulterior motives.
Sure.
And I think getting out of a long abusive relationship made me very skeptical and suspicious of people,
Sure.
which is so not me. I mean, the whole before part of my life, I would say I erred more on the side of being naive,
Right.
but I just trusted people more. And that's unfortunate. So now in life, I'm learning how to find a balance. But to make a long story short, I kind of went into the weekend like, oh, what's going on? And it ended up being amazing. It was so much fun. I met some amazing people. The speakers were really great and inspiring. And it turned out way different than I was expecting. The first morning I was there, I was like, I wish I had drove myself.
Yeah.
So that I could leave.
Right.
I don't want to be here.
Right.
But I'm so glad I stayed. And it just goes to show that sometimes, we get very uncomfortable in situations because it's new or it's just been a while and we assume it's going to be bad. And we're incredibly surprised by the outcome. So
Right.
it was great. I'm glad to be back though in time to do our show.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing. All right. Last but certainly not least, the writer of tonight's write-up and our friend from Australia, Glenn. Glenn, take a minute and say hello to the peoples, please.
Yeah, hi. I'm my usual boring self, so nothing to report. That Sandra said Jen had photos on Facebook. I thought, oh, all right, I don't know what this is about. So I saw, Jen, have you coloured your hair dark?
I did months ago.
Right.
So it's growing out.
It looks good.
Oh, thank you. I do like it darker.
Yep.
Look really good in the photo.
Thank you, good sir.
Oh,
I feel really good. Watch it.
And there's no, I've not been cooking anything up from my chemistry set, so just so you're aware of that.
Okay.
That was hilarious.
That was good. That was good.
I had a little bit of a delayed reaction there.
Yeah, it happens sometimes. It happens. All right. Well, that's the panel. And now we're going to say hello to those folks that are in the chat. And Jen, if you could do the honors, that would be great.
Sure. Starting from the top, we've got our very own Nez. Okie Grower popped in. Hey, Okie. Naughty Nikib. Is it Nikib, right?
Nikki B, I think, but
Nikki B.
Yeah, just Nikki here.
Nikki. Okay. Hey, Nikki. Let's see. We got Glenn, Patty Fish, and I think, Burnt Flowers just popped in, and John Dons. Hey, guys.
Yep.
Cheers to you too, Burnt Flowers. John, we hope you're doing well. Glad you're here.
Yeah. Always glad John's here. Yeah, he's a friend of mine, and we haven't talked on the phone or anything in a while, but he's a very interesting, intelligent guy, and I'm glad to know him. It's interesting that of all my friends who have, been encouraging for me to do something like this or be in radio and things like that, that none of them are here, but there's John Bonds being supportive. And it means a lot to me. So thanks for coming.
He's consistent.
Yes.
He's a consistent friend.
Yes. If we ever make it out to California, of course, we're going to have to come visit. If you make it back this way ever, too, we need to come visit. It's just such a damn shame that California is so far away. I mean, it's like 4 days by car. Of course, a plane flight would be a lot quicker. But California is so weird. He and I used to argue about that. I would make fun of him for, having been from California. And back then, the Dallas Cowboys and the San Francisco 49ers were big rivals. And guess who was a San Francisco fan and who was a Cowboys fan? I'll just leave that with you. All right. So we'll try to say hello to everyone that comes in the chat as they do. But for now, we're going to dive into this topic. And again, the topic for tonight, For the Life of Me, Part 5, I Walk with Ghosts. Welcome to part 5 of For the Life of Me. For the next 4 episodes of this series, the focus will be on some of the why we think and act as we do. What has shaped our identity to this moment, and how might we arrange the elements of ourselves that are based on denial rather than truth? The passing of Sinéad O'Connor once again illustrates that each of us is human, vulnerable to the pain of living each day. Sometimes it becomes too much. Sometimes there is a way back. Please, if this is you, reach out for assistance from professional therapy or just someone to speak with. Tonight's song is I Walk with Ghosts, an appropriate commencement point, as we all have both light and dark in our past. Scott Buckley, the composer, describes this song as, quote, a haunting, bittersweet, neoclassical track featuring atmospheric synth blended with emotional strings. For me, it was an exploration of how we go through life with baggage that we all deal with in our own ways, ghosts of our past lives. Link is in the description. For this show, ghosts are those negative, neutral, and positive influences that we carry with us as life plays out daily. Okay, let's try to identify the ghost from each of our personal perspectives. What thoughts emerge from the examples? Ghost from role models, ghost from self-evaluation, ghost from stress and feeling uptight, ghost from social awkwardness, ghost from inhibitions and fear, ghost from addictions, ghost from rejection, ghost from assumptions, ghost from faith and beliefs, ghost from any other place. We all have ghosts, and they are not going away. Most people tend to act out patterns of behavior and have no idea why they do so, let alone ever consider what has led to such behaviors. For now, we move to the introduction of the word, quote, freedom, unquote, in life and what that means to each of us. My friend Annie sees freedom as, quote, freedom is facing the truth. It's mustering the courage time and again after every fall to get back up and continue slowly stripping away the illusions that have been built as the foundations of who we want to believe others are. Freedom is releasing the burden of carrying the lies that we tell ourselves to hide in the shadows, behind the illusions that make us feel so safe, end quote. What is your definition of freedom? Following on, Annie's questions are, what lies do you tell yourself? What illusions do you paint as portraits and what illusions do you paint as portraits and hang about who others are so that someone's attention is distracted, helping you to refrain from viewing yourself? It is interesting that Annie took the emphasis from self in part of her definition as, quote, illusions that have been built as the foundations of who we want to believe others are, end quote. This seems applicable to a conversation with Jen during the week, the relevant part being Glenn to Jen, quote, you fear that if you share what you really think, it will make things worse and might bust this relationship completely. But by your not speaking truth, it is busting your relationship with yourself. Basically, I think you need to decide which relationship takes priority and get that into your head, end quote. I asked Jen, what did she think of these words? And she will share that response. But first, what do the others here think? Freedom is not so much about purging ghosts, but being able to find a place for them. When they present themselves, you don't ignore them. You listen to what they have to say. After all, it costs nothing to listen, and what you hear may be everything you require in that moment. And finishing up with a quote, for to be free is not merely to cast off one's chains, but to live in a way that respects and enhances the freedom of others. That's by Nelson Mandela. All right. A lot to dig into here. So we'll start right at the top, and just let me just check the chat and make sure no one new popped in. Looks like not as of yet, so we'll keep an eye on that. All right. So just briefly, it's sad to have lost Sinéad O'Connor, and she definitely was a very much a musical part of my life. I think she was for a lot of people. And as we get older, we lose more people. And Sinead just a couple years older than I am, and she very much was a big part of my life in that way. As much as someone that you've never met in person can be, but that has impact through their music and through their voice, and also social commentary in this case. So it's hard losing people. It's probably even harder losing people that we know and have seen and spent time with, of course. But when we lose like a celebrity or someone whose music has moved us in that way, it just becomes more and more difficult to me. It doesn't seem to get easier as I get older and get closer to understanding mortality and how that will play a part in our lives, the older we get. But anyway, my heart goes out to her family and prayers for everyone involved. All right. So before the questions for this show, ghosts are those negative, neutral, and positive influences that we carry with us as life plays out daily. Okay, let's try to identify the ghost from each of our personal perspectives. What thoughts emerge from the examples? First example is ghost from role models. Ghost from role models. Anyone have a thought about that? Anyone have any ghost from role models?
I think this could be, well, I was thinking about famous people, but it doesn't have to be famous people. It could be somebody that's actually in your life. I think this could possibly or potentially be comparing yourself to other people, to your role models.
Yeah.
It's like if it's not just about looking up to them and being inspired by them, the positive stuff, sometimes it can flip into being jealous, envious, even resentment. And that could be a ghost that could follow you around.
Sure.
What do you think?
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. When I think of role models, I can't help but think I wish I had role models. When I was a kid, I think I looked up to actors, people in movies, because that's something I was interested in doing. But the most poignant thought that comes to mind is that before all the things happened with Jim Bakker himself wasn't really a role model, but pastors in general, and the more they're open to the public, the larger at that time, which is what Jim Bakker was. And Jim Bakker was more than just like a pastor. He was a television show host, and also we had some personal dealings with them. I had mentioned before that my dad is a gospel singer, even to this day, and they traveled with us. Jim and Tammy traveled with us to a couple of telethons because my dad's group, the Envoys, used to be the main singers for the PTL show. So yeah, it was a lot more personal when all that stuff happened to me, because we weren't like buddy, but I knew the guy more than just seeing him on TV. And his daughter went to the Christian school that I was involved with, so I knew her as well. So when all that stuff happened, it really changed the way I looked at the role model of having someone within Christianity be in an elevated place of importance, at least when it came to me. It really destroyed that for me, and I'm glad it did, because all these years later, I'm able to see things more clearly, and now I have an understanding I didn't have then, that these people are human. Around that same time, there were singers in popular Christian groups that were caught with their hand in someone else's pants, and they're married, and it happened all the time, and they fall like dominoes. It seems like when one of those folks falls, there's always two or three more right behind it, and this doesn't end. This is a cyclical thing that happens, not just within Christianity, just in life in general. People being caught not being who they present themselves to be. My point is that for me, that was a real turning point in my life, and I had decided that I can't have role models. And even now, at my age, looking at the world, who out there can be a role model for anyone? Is it president that we can all look up to and admire? Not for me. Is it anyone within Christianity that really stands out as being someone who takes responsibility for their own failures and also speaks the truth of the Bible and doesn't alienate people that don't agree with them? Again, no. So if there's a ghost from role models for me, it is a long past ghost of having ever looked up to these people in the first place. But fortunately, I can say at least now, I don't look for any role models. I really wish I could. I wish there was someone that I could look up to and pattern my life after in some way, or even take what they say and make it my own. I mean, I think I can do that in small ways with different things people say. But as far as holding someone up to be a role model, unfortunately, I can't. So that's mine. Nez or Glenn, who would like to go next? Ghost from role models. Anyone have anything to say about that?
I learned as I grew into an older adult that if we can use heroes as the same pretty much as role models, I learned that they fall off their pedestal. They are just people too.
Yeah.
And as a Christian, Jesus is our role model. That's who we should be aspiring to be like and to behave like, because if you're relying on a human being, you're going to be let down.
Good point.
So I really can't think. I think as far as role models from the past, even if those people fell off their respective pedestals one way or another, I still carry some of the good things that I did get and that I did learn from those people with me today, particularly those who've inspired me to go in the direction of art.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Yeah. And don't you find those people can be very influential, and some of them you may not even talk to anymore? I think that's interesting. Yeah.
Yep. They're still with me.
Right. So Glenn's right in a way and they end up being a ghost, even if they're not someone you even speak to anymore. I would even say that's true for me, saying that I don't have role models now because of what happened back then, but I still am pretty passionate about the things that happened with Jim Baker and some of the other folks. So perhaps I was wrong. Maybe there's some ghost of role models in there yet. I'll have to process that a little bit more. Glenn, ghost from role models. What do you have to say about it?
I was just thinking in the moment. I can pinpoint three. Well, the obvious one is family, from both a positive and I'd say negative. The negative was the role model of the role of women in the home.
Sure.
And the rescuing mentality, codependence. The positive was how my mum and dad instilled into me a set of values and principles which are really strong, which are right here today.
Yeah.
And of course, at the time you don't realise it, but I see evidence of it every day.
Sure.
So that's that one. The second one is Sandra, in a positive sense, that she has demonstrated to me that what courage looks like in a person and how someone can carry such what's the word on adversity
Yeah.
in a positive sense into their life, and when you look at someone who does that, any person who does that, they are inspirational to others
Oh,
who
that's good.
in
That's a
many
good point.
cases have a lot less to deal with.
Huh.
Number 3 is the association with this show, in that looking at a lot of these other YouTube channels, they role model to me exactly what not to do.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I think it was the case of every time I sat there with my mouth open at what people were saying and doing,
Yeah.
it gave me a fantastic example of how that sense of community, that people matter,
Yeah.
there's no value in putting people down.
No.
All those kind of things that they were doing, I just switched around, and it became actually a reinforcement of the role models that had gone before. So
Wow.
that's my 3.
Well, thank you, Glenn. That gave me a lot to think about. It's interesting that I didn't think of it the way you're thinking of it, which doesn't surprise me. But yeah, you've given me more to think about as far as I didn't think about family. It didn't even enter my mind. That's interesting. I have to think about why that is. Because as you were talking, of course, I can think of both negative and positive influences my family has had on me. I just never thought of it in terms of them being role models, but whether you like it or not, they are. I mean, how can they not be? They're responsible for you for the first, 17, 18 years of your life. And then, if they're still around, even if they're not around, they still have helped shape you. And I've talked about how my mom has helped shape me in both negative and positive ways. And so, yeah, thank you for that. I'll have to think more about it. All right. Let's look at ghosts from self-evaluation. Now, where I didn't have as much to say about role models, I have plenty to say about ghost of self-evaluation. I haven't been very silent about the way I've seen myself in certain ways. Talked a lot about that on this broadcast. And fortunately, it's gotten a lot better with my self-evaluation, but things still creep up from time to time. And so I definitely could consider those ghosts. And I would say, from the quote above, negative, neutral, and positive influences we carry with us, there are both of those. Negative, fortunately, don't come up as much anymore, but I wouldn't be so bold to say that they're all completely gone. I am focused more now on the positive self-evaluation, and I think that's always a good thing as I grow and mature. And I've always been a fairly introspective person, and if you're at all introspective, then you have this battle, I think, between how you see yourself in negative ways and in positive ways. And fortunately, the positive ways for me are winning, but there's always that little nagging voice in the back of your mind. And whether it started out as someone else evaluating you and you made it your own, you're just as responsible for making those things positive for yourself. And I'm trying to do that. So I do think they are ghosts. Like I said, the nagging thoughts in your head or voices in your head from the negative. I definitely prefer the positive ones, but they're still there. Well, what do you think, Jen? Ghost from self-evaluation. What do you say?
Oh gosh, it's a big one for me. I have just had such negative self-talk in my own mind. Some of it from things that have been done and said to me in my lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
Some of it from things that weren't done and said.
Right.
And it just has ruled my life. It's dictated my life for far too long. So right now, still healing, recovering, whatever you want to call it. I've been learning how to change my thinking and have positive thoughts and internal validation.
Yeah.
And it's gotten to the point where people can say whatever they want, or do or not say whatever they want.
Right.
It's just it doesn't affect me as much as it did, and I'm hoping to get to the point where it doesn't affect me at all.
Right.
Because they just they can be them. They can think what they want to think. They can
Yeah.
make judgments, have opinions. Doesn't
Yeah.
make it fact.
No.
And I know myself a lot better, and I just am not the kind of person anymore that allows other people to define me. And so the thought plays into that. You know, these ghosts that I've been carrying around in my brain and my thought life I just got to the point where I'm done with letting it rule me.
Yeah.
It's amazing how much damage that can do when you just it's almost like, I don't think, we're never taught how to shape our thought life.
Yeah.
There's no classes in school that teach you that, and discussions really. I think there's more these days than there used to be with most of us growing up.
Sure.
But I think it takes practice to learn how to slow your thoughts down and examine them, and the ones that are lies, to pluck them out.
Yeah.
And be like, get out of here.
Yeah.
Or even pray about it and ask God to help you. I remember praying specifically that the Holy Spirit would help my thoughts slow down. I mean, they're like lightning.
Yeah.
I could have so many thoughts in a split second. So sometimes it's really difficult to slow it down and catch those lies, these things that we've believed about ourselves or other people or other things.
Sure.
And say, nope, I'm not accepting that.
Right.
No. And it did work.
Yeah.
It just takes a while.
Don't you think that the antidote to that, the judgments and thoughts that other people put on you that you make your own, is telling yourself the truth about who you are? It seems to me that's the antidote, is telling yourself the truth, believing yourself, believing that you know what's best, you know yourself better, and having that remove those voices. I like you to pluck it out, get out of there. I like that.
I think it's great to have other people speak into your life.
Sure.
And I know there's value in having a friend or friends that are direct and will call you out on your stuff.
Yeah.
But when it's abusive and it's not true, that's when you got to do some evaluating.
Exactly. I think it makes a huge difference if the person that's giving you the advice or making the suggestions actually cares about you. And you know that if they're saying something that feels negative or hard for you to hear, that their reasons for doing that is for you to be better.
Yeah. Especially when it's balanced with the kind of relationship that is encouraging and supportive at other times. If it's a relationship that hasn't been encouraging and supportive, and there's just judgment or assumptions coming your way from those people, it gives you a little bit more of an idea of if you should listen or not.
Sure. Good point. Yeah. Thanks, Jen.
Yeah.
I want to say a quick hello to Christ is the Truth. Our friend is here, and we're glad that you're here, buddy. Thanks for stopping by. Good to see you. And also, Rachel Menifee is in the chat as well. We're happy to see her. Thank you for coming. All right. Let's hear from Nez, Ghost from Self-Evaluation. Of course, you've never struggled with any of that, have you, Nez?
Sure I have. It's, if we can substitute the word ghosts for spirits or demons or whatever you want to call it, negative entities that are trying to drag you back to your past, things to bring you shame, things to bring you condemnation. As a Christian, Scripture tells us there's no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. And I see it now when those negative thoughts come back, reminding me of this that had happened previously. Those are attempts to just bring me down. They're not meant to improve me. They're not meant to build me up. They're quite the opposite. I see them as an attack, and I treat them as such. And I go to the Lord in prayer, and I try to focus on things that I need to be focusing on, not listening to the same old hateful, toxic rhetoric that they've been spitting at me most of my adult life. So,
Right. Exactly.
you know, there's no point in it. And I agree with what you said that when somebody is giving you or has given you some words that maybe are hard to take, but they come from a place of love. It's coming
Right.
from somebody who does love you and does have your better interests in heart.
Right.
Is a completely different thing, and it makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've struggled with that, and if you take a moment, I'm sure you can hear an echo of one of those voices saying something negative about you from the past or previous things, but you don't have to listen to it. And you certainly don't have to engage it and respond to it. If you're busy living your best life now and moving forward, then there's no point in even listening to any of that.
Oh, good point. Yeah. Similar to what Jen said about getting it out of there. You just phrased it differently, but it's the same point. You don't have to listen to it. And I like that. We have that choice, I believe. I mean, it's right in the question, self-evaluation. So we don't have to take anyone else's. We can have our own evaluations. Perfect. What do you say, Glenn? Ghost from self-evaluation.
I'm going to keep this one short
All right.
because I'm going to be popping up in quite a few of the others down further.
Okay.
I would summarise it as the ghost from the introversion, self-evaluation, like that naturally introverted personality was, how do you fit in?
Yeah.
Get it? But that, as I said, is going to come out with social awkwardness, inhibitions, rejection, assumptions. Oh my goodness, yeah. Tick them off.
Right.
Hand goes up. So we'll get to it. Thanks.
Okay. Thanks, Glenn. Appreciate
Thanks.
that. All right. Moving on to ghosts from stress and feeling uptight.
Oh.
Jen, you made a noise. You want to take that one first?
Yeah, first thing that popped into my mind is that hypervigilance
Yeah.
of just being suspicious of people. It's no way to live. I think there are other ways we can protect ourselves from being hurt or taken advantage of or abused, other than just being so suspicious of people that you don't know,
Yeah.
So yeah, that's mine that I'm working through.
Sure.
Because I think about all the friendships or people or stories or experiences that you can miss out on by being hypervigilant and just really suspicious,
Yeah.
which then leads you to be closed off.
Sure.
Like being too cautious.
Yeah.
So that would be mine. That's what
Yeah.
popped in my head.
Yeah, and we see that with people that have agoraphobia, or they can't even leave their house, and that might have been due to some horrible, tragic, horrific thing that happened to them that caused them to be afraid. But talk about stress and feeling uptight. I mean, you feel safe in your own home, but you don't feel safe outside to the point where you have like extreme vertigo if you even step out of the front porch. Of course, Hollywood has, probably exaggerated that. I don't know. I have never known someone to be agoraphobic, but it is a real thing that exists out there. So that's an intense case of stress and feeling uptight. I hate stress and I hate feeling uptight. I've never really considered myself a terribly uptight person. But I do remember when I graduated high school and was hanging around my friends, and they had moved forward more than I had into, smoking weed and heavy drinking and stuff. And I fought it. I really fought it at first. I just felt like it was going against the way I was raised, and I was a quote unquote square at that point. And eventually I gave in. I think I had it right the first time, but what I learned was I didn't have to be so uptight about things and let other people do what they want to do. It doesn't mean I have to do it. But stress is just, I don't like the way it feels. I definitely feel like I know when I'm under a lot of stress. And of course, it's one of those things they list as something that affects your heart over time. People that have had a heart attack, they're always told, don't get yourself in stressful situations. But I think, have you lived in this world? Have you driven in traffic? Have you had to stand in line behind 50 or 60 people for something that you should just be able to move up the counter and take care of and get out of there, like the DMV?
Yeah.
Or taxes? Oh my gosh. I mean, I could name 10 different things right now, and people will have to fight their stress feeling just even talking about it. Bills and everything happening in the world. I mean, there's so many things that give us stress if we allow it. And it's hard to fight those things, feeling uptight. So I have plenty of these. Again, with the way I answered to other things, I feel like I'm in a really good place in my life right now. And that is self-evaluation, but there are some proofs of that. And, people have commented on seeing differences in me. And the most important thing, though, is despite what other people see, I see it in myself. And I do feel stressed from time to time, and I feel uptight about some things, but it's gotten a lot more manageable. But I agree that the ghosts are always there. It's just whether you allow them to rule over you or not. And I don't like to do that. I like to, if I feel stressed out, I try to do things that are calming, or sometimes stress comes up because there's something you're not facing. You feel uptight about something. There's a message there that your body is sending you, or your spirit is sending you, that something needs to be addressed. I think I've shared, I don't want to go on too long, but I shared with that job that I had working from home for the roadside assistance company that should not be named. And I was having nightmares. Talk about stress. I mean, I did feel stressful in the daytime, but it was bleeding into my sleep time. That's not fun. And it's not fun for my wife when I scream out in the night. It's not worth living your life in situations where the job that you have is so stressful that your body is having to react while you're asleep to get your attention. It's not good. So
No.
for me, the best thing to do was to move away from the job, and it hasn't happened since. It happened a couple more times after I left the job. They were little remnants. One of the worst ones I had was the last one. It was more real than any other of the other dreams I had before. I look at it as almost the stress saying goodbye, but doing it in a real dramatic way. I could be wrong about that, but that's the way it feels. Nez, what do you think? Ghost from stress and feeling uptight.
I think you, as a human being, you have to confront these stressors quite frequently. Like you said, there's many things that can bring on a state of stress. But as far as ghosts from past stresses, I really can't say I have that. Any of the stress I have is from what's going on right now.
Sure.
I think I had to learn to let go of the ghosts of stresses from the past, or I couldn't be functioning properly in the way I'm able to do now. One thing I did learn is that you've got to just focus on your self-care as part of dealing with any of the stresses that come up. And I know stress can make you tempted to neglect your self-care, to not take time for your spiritual well-being, to not take time for some people for, put off eating, or, any number of things that are beneficial to you.
Yeah.
To help you deal with stress. We often let stress use that as a reason to not do those things. I've had to learn to work around that and to not let stress keep me from doing things to maintain my self-care.
Sure.
So thankfully, I don't think I've really dealing from any ghosts of stress from the past. I just kind of got to deal with things as they come right now.
Sure. Okay. Good enough. All right. I'm asking Glenn last. Normally I try to mix it up a little bit. When he did the write up, I try to ask him last. I just wanted to just say that it is a little bit intentional. But Glenn, you're last on this one. Ghost from stress and feeling uptight. What do you have to say about this one?
You know, the ghost, it's definitely there. The major one is the stress from a relationship breakdown and having a child taken away.
Oh gosh.
That strips the weight off you. Like, you can't eat,
I
you
can't
can't
even
function.
imagine.
It's a terrible, horrible feeling. And I remember the stress that when Jonathan had been taken away, and I had access rights, once every one day or 2 days on the weekend, every fortnight, and he'd been, what's the word, indoctrinated, and sometimes
Right.
he didn't want to come down to see me. Sandra and I were together then.
Yeah.
He would have been 10, 11, sort of, and this sort of what's an age where they're pretty, pliable kids.
Yeah.
And I remember Sandra saying to me, look, how you deal with this situation with your son is going to, as a child, is going to determine your relationship with him as an adult. And she said, whatever you do, do not force him to come when he doesn't want to, because it will cause so much angst down the line.
Wow.
She was 100% at that, but I can't even sort of say to openly what that feels like. Just the stress of not being able to, you want to force him, but you don't want to, sort of thing. You want to see your child. Oh, it's like a hocus pocus of emotions, and Sandra was. I took Sandra's advice, and she was 100% right.
Sure.
100%. So, I think carrying that ghost really made me see, even as I got older, even further and further, look at things and just think, is this trivial or is this important? And if it's not important, why stress about it?
Right.
So I went from being uptight to pretty chilled. I think.
Yeah, I think you're a
Just
pretty chill person.
Very chilled.
Yeah.
Because what is important here? And there's only there's so many things that aren't important.
Right.
So,
Wow.
but the ghost is there as a huge example.
Right.
Nonetheless, it doesn't. It's not a nice feeling to even think about it, but it's real.
Yeah.
It happened. So there it is.
Right.
Live with it.
Well, Glenn, thanks for sharing that. And I meant it when I said I can't. I can barely even imagine. I don't have kids, but I can put myself into that position. And I was also going to add that I wish Sandra could get that message out, because there's a lot of broken families, and by broken I mean divorce with kids involved. And that advice is so good. It would help a lot of people whose kids are having to go through the breakup that they're going through as adults. And I think a lot of times they're used as pawns in a dangerous game against the other spouse. It's horrible. And this isn't something I'm making up. Obviously, everyone knows someone that has gone through a divorce who has kids involved. And it seems like a lot of times they don't even consider how difficult that might be for the child that's going through divorce, that they shouldn't have to be dealing with at whatever age. I mean, I remember when my parents divorced, I was in my early 20s, and I acted out as a result of that. It's ridiculous. I was angry at both my parents. So I can't imagine what it would be like to have to fight for time with my kids. It's just horrible. So I'm very sorry you have had to go through that, but I know it shaped you. All the things that we go through, they either wreck us or shape us. Depends on how we look at it and what we decide to do about it. And Sandra's advice, obviously, you know more than I do, but it was very good in my opinion. I'm glad you had her to help you through that. And I think people might be interested to know what kind of relationship you have with your son now, if you want to share that real quickly.
As I just said in chat, absolutely wonderful with both my children.
Yeah.
It's not really a father-son relationship. It's like mates,
Right.
confidants, friends.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's a big key here is you can't expect your kids to live in your generation.
No.
You can't speak to them as though what applied to you applies to them. It doesn't work.
Oh.
You don't give them it. You don't tell them. Don't give them you don't start telling them you should do this, you should do that, because that's how we did it nowadays. That is the biggest thing that's going to cause a rift. No. There's a whole different way of you speak as equals, not as that's for sure.
Jen, is that as big to you as it is to me?
It's incredibly big to me.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, there's real life examples of how that falls apart when a parent passes along things, and they're oblivious as to the world is not the way it was. I mean, when someone is in retirement and living off, the money from the government or from inheritance and things like that, and they look at us and say, oh, you just need to pound the pavement, get out there and get a full-time job with benefits. Yeah, it's not that easy anymore. It's not the way it was. It's just an example to back up what Glenn's saying. Again, I'm not a parent. I have 3 nieces and a nephew, but it's nowhere near the same. But I understand that the world that they're growing up in is different than the one I grew up in. Very different. And so if I'm passing along advice and suggestions that it has been formed by the world I lived in, trying to make it fit into the world they live in, you can see how wrong that is and how destructive. So thank you, Glenn. That was a really good point. I appreciate that one. All right. The next one, and Jen's might want to go first. This one, Ghost from Social Awkwardness. The only reason I say that is because she just worked through something, a part of her own social awkwardness. And Jen, you don't have to talk about that if you don't want to, but it's a good opportunity. Ghost from Social Awkwardness. Jen, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. Thinking of how to put this into words. So before I talked about the hypervigilance, but I think coming from a place for the longest time, when I had been stuck in a position of allowing other people to define me, it made me feel very insecure in myself. Like I didn't know who I was, because it sort of changed depending on the people I was around, what their opinions of me were.
Sure.
So that causes a very disrupted or non-existent foundation. So yeah, I was very socially, like, it wasn't socially awkward. I mean, like, I could call it that, but it wasn't like I'd be acting awkward.
Right.
Although maybe it might have come across that way to some people that are observant. But it just was uncomfortable and anxiety ridden. Is that right?
Sure.
Full of anxiety.
Yeah.
And so that too gets in the way of you being your true self. It has the focus on yourself instead of people around you that you should be pouring into or paying attention to. It's very preoccupying.
Oh.
In a big way, like in your mind.
Sure.
So a lot of times I wasn't present or fully present.
Wow.
Because I'd be doing that ruminating on all kinds of things. It wasn't just one thing. It was usually multiples, you know, and it just has your brain spinning while you're sitting there looking stoic, like everything's fine. At least that was for me.
Right.
So it's just, it doesn't really bode well with social peace or something else you call it.
Right.
So that's what I'll share.
Okay. What I was going to say was this trip that you went on, you were sharing with me, that I don't think you used the word social awkwardness, but, your
Social
concerns,
anxiety.
social anxiety, and you faced it.
Yeah.
And I just want to make the point that if you have any of this, and he goes from social awkwardness, I think the only way is through, not around. I'm very much a proponent of facing your fears, feel whatever they may be. In this case, social awkwardness. If you feel socially awkward, the best way to get over that is by working through it. That's just my opinion.
Yeah.
And you certainly did that this weekend, and ended up being a victory, in my opinion. And you have reasons to be, your vigilance, hypervigilance, and all that. Yeah, you want to remove the word hyper away from it, but
Yeah.
I think it's safe to be vigilant sometimes, especially when you go through abuse. I mean, it's understandable to me why you would feel that way.
Yeah.
And there's reasons why a person might feel socially awkward as
Yeah.
well. Nez, what do you say? Goes from social awkwardness. Anything you want to add there?
Thankfully, I really don't struggle with those anymore. As a child, I was very shy, very introverted and withdrawn. And then when I got into theater in high school,
Yeah.
that pretty much all went away.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I still, now having lived life and gone through abuse, I have that vigilance, and I have to work to make it not hyper vigilance. Not everything is a red flag.
Right.
And, when you learn so much of how to identify certain behaviors, you can get that way. I got that way. I'm like, oh my God, everybody's a narcissist. No, it's not. Not everybody's a narcissist. Not everybody's out to get you.
No.
But as long as I keep a rein on it and just try to keep a sensible level of awareness, keep your head on a swivel, that's a good idea.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anytime.
Yep.
No shame in being cautious, and you can
No.
be cautious without being paranoid.
Of course.
I'd say
Ooh.
that's where I'm at. So
There's the quote
good.
for the night so
caution
far.
without paranoia. That's
Yeah.
another show right there.
It is. I would agree. Thank you, Ness.
Write it up, Nez. Write it up.
Write it up. Right. Glenn, goes from social awkwardness.
Yep, hand up. Yeah, you bet. Introvert.
Sure.
Very quite difficult to fit into social situations because the things that people would talk about and want to be involved with held absolutely no interest from what I wanted, and I seemed to be for myself what I wanted for myself, and it seemed that nobody had any interest in what I liked.
Right.
So therefore, you think, okay, how much do I have to change myself to fit in? My goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I tried that.
Yeah.
In the teen years and it's high school and stuff.
How'd that go?
I'm trying to think of how bad I can. What's the worst word you can think of? Disastrous.
Disaster.
A nightmare.
Oh, no, nightmare.
A
Both those are
humongous
good.
failure.
Yeah. Humongous failure.
Hey, there are no failures, just lessons.
Oh.
No.
And you can either
Terrible.
spend
I
time
hated
trying
it.
to
Yeah.
You can either spend time trying to fit in or being comfortable with who you are. I'm sorry, I just had to throw that out there.
Sure.
Oh, very much so. I don't like that word hate, as you know, but I hated every minute of it. I just like a duck out of water. It's very.
Yeah.
The more you try to fit in, the more isolated you become.
Wow. Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Of course, as you get older, you hopefully learn that trying to do that is just so destructive.
Yeah.
So yeah, no.
Wow.
That's definitely a social awkwardness. Was not now though.
Sure.
Thankfully. Thanks.
Sure. Thank you, Glenn. Like Nez, I haven't dealt with this a whole lot. Now, I'd be lying if I said I've never dealt with it, but my awkwardness came from being an extrovert. I would consider myself mostly an extrovert, very personable and social and things like that. A lot of the awkwardness came from probably me being too social and people not being used to that. Didn't struggle with it much at all. When you'd think of the person would struggle with it when I was a kid. I do have one story to tell, and that's having gone to Christian school my whole life. When I had to go to driver's ed, they had it. They held it in a major high school. The driver's ed classes were held there during the summer, and I just had no idea what going to a public high school was like, and that's exactly what it felt like. And I wanted to make a good impression. Here's this Christian school kid, being surrounded by assumedly all public school kids, and I wanted to make an impression. I remember I failed horribly at it, or at least in my mind, looking back at it. I remember I had a pair of those foldable sunglasses that you could fold up and put in a bag.
Yeah. Yep.
And I loved
or your
them.
pocket.
Right. I forget the name of them, but I thought they were fantastic. And I wore them indoors. I wanted to be cool and wore them indoors. And it just failed utterly. People would come, why are you wearing sunglasses in the building? Oh, I told them I had problems with my eyes and light sensitive and all that. But everyone wanted to see what my eyes looked like. And I was wearing these sunglasses. It just brought more attention to myself rather than doing what I wanted to do. Is people think I'm cool and leave me alone, So I did end up making friends from that class, but it just started out horribly. I was just trying to act like someone I wasn't. So that was the most social awkward, and I haven't thought about that since it happened. But the way that questions do sometimes, they force you to look inward, and that's the story that comes up. But so not a whole lot of that, but there's just that one ghost that I learned from. Fortunately, after that, I try just to be myself, and that's the least social awkward thing that I think anyone can do. To be themselves. And if people don't like you, maybe they're not the right people for you to worry about their opinion in the first place.
Yep.
So there's that.
Jason, were the glasses Cobra glasses?
I don't, insurance?
That wasn't the name. The folding
Cobra.
glasses.
Oh, I don't remember. I'm gonna have to look it up.
Were they black framed?
Yeah,
I'm
they were
just curious.
black framed. Yeah,
Okay.
they were black framed. Yeah.
Not that that matters. I'm
I
just
thought
curious.
that was so cool. So cool. All right. Ghost from Inhibitions and Fear. Ghost from Inhibitions and Fear. I'll go first on this one. I mentioned a little bit earlier about my friends were all doing stuff that I felt against at that time. I gave into that. I definitely had inhibitions. And I think in many ways they have protected me rather than got me into trouble. If I would have held on to them, it probably would have ended up better for me. Fear, though, there's the kind of fear we've talked about that, from trying to take selfies near wild animals in a natural preserve or wildlife park where people drive through there. They get out of their cars and they go up to a bison and try to get selfies near him and end up getting gored. Ridiculous. So there's a healthy fear, I think. But I think the fear that's being asked here is the fear that cripples us and paralyzes us. And I've had that, mostly about life stuff, rather than, I have some fear about someone breaking into the house, and those were the dreams that I had. So obviously that preyed on a latent, I would say it's a pretty latent fear. I don't think about it all the time, but when I was alone, it didn't bother me as much. If someone breaks in the house and kills me, what difference did it make to me back then? Now I have a lot to lose. I have a woman that I love, and so there's a real healthy fear of protecting against that. We have a security system, and I make sure all the doors and windows are locked every night and things like that. So there are things you can do, I think, to alleviate that. But I think for all of us, there's still the ghost of fear from something in there. My worst fear is phobia is falling through ice, like in a river or something, and then being stuck under the ice. And that's not a real rational fear. I mean, it's good to fear that if you're walking across a questionable river or a questionable lake in the wintertime. But it just doesn't come up very often. It seems like if I was going to be afraid of something, it would be, something like flying or something like that people face every day. It's just not something I run into very often, especially living in the South. But that fear was because I did fall in an icy river. There wasn't ice on there, but it was cold in the wintertime, and I could have drowned if it weren't for my aunt pulling me out. I didn't know how to swim at the time. I learned how quickly after that, but it was a scary moment for me. Of course, I'm looking at it from the perspective of a 5-year-old. It may have not been that big of a deal, but the river would get pretty swift when there would be ice and snow. And it was definitely cold. And so sometimes if I close my eyes in the summer when I'm taking a cold shower, I kind of catch my breath a little bit. It grabs me. But I think for everyone, there may be these ghosts of inhibitions and fears, things that keep you from stepping out and doing things that would be very beneficial. That's what I think of for both of these. And I definitely have those. Like the other ways that I've answered, it's getting a lot better. I've ventured out into some areas where in the past I had a lot of anxiety about and had a lot of concerns about, and certain jobs. I have a corporate job now. I work for a major company, and because of a bad experience I had working for a major company, it was the most soul-sucking job I ever had. And after that, I didn't want any part of it. And there are still reasons for that. This is a pretty good company, and I was just talking to Jen about this today, in fact. I found a good one as far as corporations go. But I would love to be in a place where my fear and inhibitions didn't keep me from doing things that would be beneficial to myself or my family. Yeah. So I'm a work in progress when it comes to this. I am doing a lot better, but I'm sure I could continue to improve in that area. Anyone else want to answer? Ghosts from inhibitions and fear.
Yeah, it just occurred to me this past weekend that I think I grapple with a fear of success.
Oh.
Which is so odd, because it just made me pause. Like, what am I so afraid of? Is it really failing? Right. Or is it actually succeeding? And why? Why is that?
Yeah.
And I'm still digging into it, so I don't have any answers for y'all quite yet to share. No, but when I do, I'll share with you guys.
Oh, that's good.
I've got my hand raised up.
Let me just.
Okay, you go. Oh, go ahead.
Let me just say a quick hello to our friend Ultra Maga Patriot for Life. Hello.
That's Big Tim. Hi, Big Tim.
Hey, Big Tim. Welcome.
Hey, Big Tim.
Wanted to do that. Go ahead, Naz. I didn't mean to interrupt.
And hi, Pammy. Pammy Clyde's here too.
Oh, I missed Pammy Clyde. Pammy Clyde.
When I went as a child to a psychologist, one of my mother's friends, my mother was a nurse and had lots of friends that were doctors of this and that. I went to specialist after specialist for this and that. The psychologist told me I had a fear of success.
Oh.
And what I've come to realize is that it's not that you're afraid of all the good things that come with it, but the responsibilities that come with success, because when you're blessed with much, then much is required of you. And that's where what I struggle with. And I'm just kind of answering my question, my part of the question for that. Okay. Yeah, it was the responsibility attached to the success that I still have to struggle with.
Oh.
I think you've hit on something.
Wow.
It's lighting up my brain. I'm like, this kind of rings true for me. Thank you for sharing, Naz. I appreciate that.
I really love the bell of truth being rung. I think sometimes of a pinball machine, the ball hitting all these bumpers and lights and sounds going off. That's what it feels like in my brain sometimes. So that was good. Let's see. So I answered first. Nez answered. Jen answered. So Glenn, ghost from inhibitions and fear.
Okay. Fear of success. Just to add that, I wouldn't have even thought of that, but that's a very interesting comment. Requires thinking. I don't succeed at anything, so I don't have to fear it, do I?
Oh wow. I don't think that's true.
Depends how you define success, I suppose.
I suppose it does, but since we're talking about self-evaluation, right?
Okay. Inhibitions and fear. I think it ties somewhat in with the social awkwardness from mine. Yeah, it's that inhibition that you have when you can't be yourself until you get into a situation, whether it be friends, other relationships of a deeper sort, and then when you have sort of modified yourself, attached with that is the fear that it's going to end.
Yeah. Oh.
And I've done that. I think I can see a very clear path of evolution from abject sort of fear to a place where really I really don't care anymore, in the sense that whilst I care about the relationship and the person, I don't fear it ends, because if it ends naturally, there's nothing to fear. It's just life.
Yeah.
And I can almost chart the curve, and yeah, for sure. So that's where I'm coming from.
Wow. Well, I'd like to add to that comment because it made me think of something Jen and I talk about from time to time, because we love this relationship that we have, and sometimes both of us have, some dark paths that we go through in our minds. We both have it. Now, I'm not wringing my hands every day. It doesn't happen all the time, but because this is so wonderful, this relationship that we have, and it's such a blessing. Naturally, there's the idea that if something were to happen to one of us, and for me, it's not just something happening to me. I don't fear something happening to me, or I didn't before, but it's leaving the other person here in this world, and it just is a sobering thought, because we are so attached. And I mean, she went away for the weekend, and I was just sharing with her. I've spent most of my life alone, and now I have someone that I really enjoy spending time with, and she goes away for the weekend, and I'm functioning. But I used to covet my alone time. Very different in my first marriage to this marriage. In my first marriage, if she wanted to go lay down, it was almost a blessing, because it happened all the time. So I would have time to myself, and there wasn't the pressure of seeing if she was all right and taking care of her anxiety. And I know I sound like a real asshole, but it just was an everyday thing for me. And this is a completely different scenario. So there are some of those fears. Again, I'm very logical when it comes to knowing that why would I focus on that? I should be just enjoying the time that we have, because I have no control over something horrible happening. I agree with what Glenn said. If it's natural, well, great. If it's a natural thing that happens, we'll both be in our 80s and 90s before we have to worry about it. But because of the world we live in, it's a real thing. So I just want to throw that in there because that's what it made me think of. I think it's important to enjoy the time that you have and not let these potential thoughts keep you from doing that. So that's what I'm trying to do, at least. So far, so good. I want to say hello, and forgive me about if I mispronounce your last name, but Edwin Kamaho. It's a J-O. I'm not sure. So forgive me if I didn't get the last name right, but Edwin, welcome. We're glad that you're here. So I wanted to say hello to you. All right. And correct me if you want to do a phonetic pronunciation of your name so I know how the last name is pronounced. If I didn't do it right, give me a thumbs up there, and if you'd like to. I can just call you Edwin, I hope. All right. So we all answered that one. So the next one, this is a good one. Ghosts from Addictions. I went first on the last one, so I'll give someone else a shot. Ghosts from Addictions.
I'll go first.
All right,
Smoking. I'm still smoking. I've quit a few times.
Hip deep, hip
and
deep.
I'll quit again along with another person I know who's going through the same thing. So I've quit before, I'll quit again, but that's the only one I've got. Thankfully, I never had a problem with alcohol. I went through my youth having some nights out with my best friend, but thankfully, I never got into full-blown alcoholism. Never really got into anything else that one ought not to be putting into their body on any kind of regular basis. So that's good.
Right.
Nope, smoking. Yeah. That's about all I got. So.
All right, Jen, Ghost from Addictions. What do you have to say?
Sugar and food, but mostly sugar, really had a hold on me for a long time.
Yeah.
I've been thinking about that this past weekend too with this conference thing, and just looking at the why. Why was it a ghost following me around?
Yeah.
Part of it was because I think I really needed a confidant, someone that was going to be there always.
Yeah.
Never leave.
Mm-hmm.
Always be comforting.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have a lot of comfort.
Yeah.
And so food / sugar sort of became my best friend.
Yeah.
And there was, I got into that habit of when things got stressful or I was down or sad or angry.
Yeah.
Even happy sometimes. I'm like, hey, let's go celebrate with cake. my best friend cake. Let's go celebrate. A little buddy.
Little buddy cake.
Little Pepperidge Farm ice cream cake. That's all mine. And so recognizing that was not, it was a love-hate relationship kind of for me, because I would think about it, I would get excited, and then it would be so great when I'm eating it and it's on my taste buds.
Yep.
And then right after it's down the gullet, it's like, why did I do that? So it was like this love-hate relationship. And then the guilt and shame came in. So it's like this freaking emotional roller coaster all the time.
Yeah.
The abuse cycle of sugar.
That's the way addiction works.
Yeah, right. So getting control of that and really thinking about the whys and really looking at the reality of what it was doing to my body, and my health. I think really taking an inventory of what something is doing to you is very beneficial. And the self-love coming in too. I think I hated myself in a way for a long time. And so getting to a place where that's healing and loving myself and appreciating who God created me to be.
Yes.
And that's okay as long as it doesn't tip into unhealthy.
Right.
That too played into me stopping.
Yeah.
And I'll have a treat here and there every once in a while, but it's not this like a binging thing or slippery slope of like, once a week, 3 times a week, 7 times a week, crap.
Day.
And best friend cake, we hang out every day. We're attached to the hip BFF. So yeah, that's one of mine. Great. I'll share. It's a big one.
Thanks, Jen.
Yeah.
I'll go next. I can relate to you, not as much on the sugar thing, though. When we met, I did get more into sugar, where before I just, for the most part, just wasn't a big fan of sugar. So I've had seasons of various addictions. Now, at the bottom of it, I'll just skip ahead and say that to me, for a long time, I was addicted to self-sabotage. This happened quite often, and it started when I was in therapy. So in my late 20s, with my mother's urging, I had gotten a therapist, and I'm glad I did. But I found out that when I would have these huge discoveries, these earth-shattering things that I would learn about myself and why I do things that I do, and then I would go out and do some stupid thing, like for a while, I was a gambler. We had poker machines here in South Carolina, and they're a lot of fun. Like I really enjoyed them, but you put your money in, and all it took was one big time. And actually, John Dons is the one that got me into poker machines in the first place. And the first time we went out, I talk about inhibitions. I was like, no way am I spending money on putting money in a poker machine. And he talked me into it. Now I'm responsible. I was an adult. I made my own decision, so I'm not blaming him for that. It just so happens that this thought came about addictions, and that was something that I had an issue with for a season. And first time we went out, I think it was a $5 bill. Maybe John remembers whether it was a 5 or a 10, but I put it in there, and I walked out with like $500 that first time. That's how addiction works. The first time you do something, you have this amazing time. It's awesome. And then you're chasing that time. And I'm sure I don't have to tell anyone, even if you've never gambled, that's the dangerous thing to win the first time you go out. Because then you think, oh, this is the way it works. I can put a $10 bill into a machine and walk out with $500. Who wouldn't want that? But it got bad. It got bad for a while. So, and to me, it was self-sabotage. I would be doing well, and the truth was, I felt like I didn't deserve good things. And I've worked on why that is that I have thought that. But I would, if too many things in my life were going well, I would do something to make life difficult for myself. So I've had seasons of addictions, and certainly food. I can relate to Jen on that. I've struggled with addiction to, and more than addiction to food itself, it was addiction to being overweight. Because talk about the perfect self-sabotage for someone that doesn't want to be overweight. I have struggled with that more of my adult life than not. So finally now, after all this time and all these different diets that I've been on, I would get to a certain point and feel comfortable just to self-sabotage myself and gain more weight than I lost to begin with. And this has been a cycle that has gone on for a long time. And again, at the bottom of it is I don't feel there's a part of me somewhere, whether it's fear of success or not. I think that does play a part in it. But I was addicted to self-sabotage because I can't say that, like the gambling, when I was done, I was done. It wasn't that I kept going back to it and I struggled with it and all that. In fact, when I moved with Rob and his ex-wife across the country to California, our truck broke down. U-Haul, I think it was. John can correct me on that if he's still here. But it broke down, and we were in the middle of the desert, and the closest town had this huge hotel that was a casino. And I had like $3,000 at the time, and he and I went in and spent the day in there, and I lost $80, and that was it. I didn't have any problem with the gambling anymore. So other than the self-sabotage, and I'm getting a grip on the food thing for the first time, this program is really, really working, and I don't feel like sabotaging myself. I finally am going to get past this place that I've been in, where I get to a certain point where I'm feeling pretty good about myself, and then I just screw it up, and that's not happening. I've gone past that point this time, and I couldn't be more thrilled. But Ghost from Addictions, I think so many people struggle if they're willing to admit. Some people say, well, I've never smoked crack, or I'm not addicted to heroin, so I'm good. Well, there are lots of things that can be addictions and that not be an illicit drug. People are addicted to shopping. I mentioned self-sabotage. I mean, that's not one that comes up on the 12-step group list very often. It can be a byproduct of other things, for sure. But shopping, some people are addicted to abuse, believe it or not. They stay in abusive situations and they never try to get out of it because they might be like me and have this innate feeling like they don't deserve good things. So of course they deserve abuse. So, yeah, Ghost from Addictions. That's a good one. I do have that. See, Jen and Nez and myself went, right?
I think so.
Okay. Glenn, Ghost from Addictions.
Probably a short one. I think I'm pretty down the line. I don't have an addictive personality. So, yeah, I can't think of anything.
Okay.
That answers so many questions for me regarding you.
Why?
Why?
Yeah.
It just doesn't seem like you struggle with a lot, which is great for you.
Well, I've bet on
but-
racehorses since I've bet on horses since I was 12.
Would you say that was an addiction?
No, I've never got into trouble ever.
Oh, wonderful.
Because my dad said to me, like, when I started to go to the horses with him and got involved on serious level in doing other stuff with like that, he said, here's the deal. These are the things you don't do. He set me the guidelines. Never had an issue. Just followed that.
Right.
No, there's never had one issue with gambling.
That's great.
Never smoked. No, not ever done drugs. Alcohol I can do without.
Right.
I take it or leave it. So there's nothing else really. There's nothing that if you took it away that I'd say I couldn't do without it. So I don't see myself as having that personality.
Okay. Well, thanks, Glenn.
Thanks.
Next up, Ghost from Rejection. I'm reluctantly holding myself back from answering this one first. Ghost from Rejection. Anyone want to tackle this one?
Oof, sure.
All right, go ahead, Jen.
This is a big one for me.
Yeah, me too.
It just runs so deep and back so far. Like from the very beginning, not of time, my life. Maybe time too.
Back when the dinosaurs roamed the earth.
Yeah. I think my belief for so long has been I can only accept myself if other people accept me. Wow. It was backward.
Yeah.
And so when I was feeling rejected in different ways, in different instances and memories, I just, I felt abandoned and neglected and like something was wrong with me. That's been sort of the going theme in my head my whole life, and it's so destructive and it has this ripple effect into everything, relationships and your own successes and the things you want to do in life and hopes and dreams and relationships. And I think I said that twice, but it's a big one. So again, I just think coming to a place of accepting myself instead of rejecting myself has been a huge key. And getting to the point where it's like, we've had so many conversations with Glenn about this particular point, but it's like, what I've noticed is the more I have become to accept myself, the less I've cared about if other people reject me. And if they reject me, that's on them.
Yeah.
I can imagine there are some things we can do as humans that someone would reject us and it could be potentially our fault, a way that we've treated them unlovingly.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's just been a big breakthrough for me, but it has literally ruled my life for the majority of me being on this earth.
Yeah.
And that's so sad because I can look back and see the areas that it hindered me, whether it was making friends or connecting with people.
Sure.
It was another thing that kept me more self-focused and not in a healthy way,
Wow. No.
Another way, it keeps you from being present and grateful.
Yeah.
So I kind of see living life as being in the present and being grateful for everything, even the bad stuff.
Yeah.
So if you're not doing that, which I wasn't, it's just a nightmare. It's just a freaking emotional roller coaster that never went anywhere good.
No.
And, you know, locked doors and no brakes and the seatbelt won't come off.
Yeah.
Like, I want to get on this stupid ride. I don't know how. Somebody help me.
Yeah.
I had to help myself.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the bigger lessons is I think for a long time, I wanted someone to rescue me, and I had no idea that person aside from God was me.
Right.
I had to make some choices, and I think there was a part of me that didn't want to.
Sure.
I wanted somebody else to do it for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's a big deal.
That's a big deal. Thank you, Jen.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll back up Jen and say, yeah, it's been a part of my life too. And I avoided romantic relationships for the most part. I mean, I had crushes and stuff that I would act on sometimes, but most times not. And right into my late 30s. And then I've told the story many times, and I'll just briefly say that my first marriage was definitely a byproduct of thinking that I was getting older, and if I didn't take this opportunity with that person, then it was never going to happen. I was so wrong about that, but that's the way I felt at the time. And it's so interesting that I've been afraid of rejection my whole life, and then I got myself in a situation where I would have to face the very thing that I was trying to avoid to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
To be rejected by someone because they're broken. But either way, it doesn't matter. I was rejected, very much rejected. And you could add abandonment to that. Someone abandoning a marriage. I mean, if you can call it that. It was definitely a marriage on paper, but it wasn't a real marriage. I must admit that. But yeah, I went through the rejection, went through the abandonment. And it went on, the result of that went on longer than it should have. And again, it wasn't the person, it was the institution. And it was having waited so long, waiting for the one person that I set up as an idol, marriage as an idol. So there's several different things I did wrong there. But yeah, I have been very afraid of how rejection feels, because I did feel it in little ways. Like, I mean, everyone feels it to a certain extent when you're getting picked for teams, and, you know, you don't get picked till last. That didn't happen to me a lot, but it did happen enough to not like it. Or you write up a note to some girl that you like in class, and do you like me? Check the box. Yes, no, maybe. And you give that to them. And not only do they not mark any box and send it back to you, there's nothing. Or I'll give one more. When you're in school and Valentine's Day rolls along, and each have they help you make a little folder to put your Valentines in, and you're not getting very many Valentines. That's so these little rejections happen. And really, I've had a lot of time to think about this. And the truth is that I rejected myself so no one else would. And I thought of that when Jen was talking. You know, the rejection that you do for yourself is more devastating than anything anyone else can do to you. And that was the truth for me. And I'm thankful that I had to go through that, because when Jen came along, I never once thought about it. It never occurred to me that she would reject me. And that to me is mind blowing, because she could have. She could have rejected me. She absolutely could have. There was one moment where, when we first declared our feelings for one another, she had second thoughts for a day. And Glenn and Sandra were around, and I think Glenn had mentioned how impressed he was with the way I handled it, because with everything, my fear of rejection and all that, I could have really stuffed it up. But instead, I was just, I mean, I understand, take as much time as you need. I'll be here when you make a decision or whatever. And I think that helped the situation. I really do. I think the way I reacted to it, and it was otherworldly. And I say that because of how much I feared rejection. So here it was potentially happening again. And instead of running away from it, I faced it and accepted the possibility of it. And that made all the difference. So you can face rejection. And as I said earlier, one of the other questions, it's through, not around. If you have a fear of rejection, the best way to face it is to face it. The best way to get through it is to put yourself out there. Rejection hurts. It really does. But if you're rejecting yourself and keeping yourself from potentially beneficial situations because of your fear of rejection, you're doing yourself a bigger disservice than anyone else could do to you. That's just my opinion. And it's from my own experience. So yeah, there are ghosts from that, but fortunately they don't bother me very much anymore. And I don't live in constant fear of being rejected. It's going to happen. Sometimes people don't reject you. Sometimes they accept you, and that's a really good feeling. But if you're rejecting yourself, it doesn't matter what anyone else does. And I did that for a long time. I rejected myself so no one else would. And I did things to make myself less desirable. And I'm not doing that anymore. Nez, Ghost from Rejection. What do you have to say?
Don't deal with those anymore. When I was younger, I used to feel rejection from my biological dad because he wasn't there. He left when I was just a baby. And so that set the foundation for fear of rejection for quite a long time. But as I got older, I realized even though he was not in my life, my grandfather was. My grandfather stepped up and did the job of being a good father to me.
Yeah.
And now looking back, that's so much better than what could have been. I did get to catch up with my biological dad as a young adult, and that really solidified to me why things went the way they did, and I thank God they went the way they did. Now, if people want to reject me, okay, good for you. That's your choice. People come and go for all kinds of reasons, and it doesn't even have to be rejection. I think sometimes we need to realize that if someone withdraws, it's not always just they reject you. Sometimes life just takes them a different direction. And I think it takes a certain level of maturity to what's the word I'm looking for? Accept. I want to say interpret. I guess interpret is to figure out what is blatant, flat out rejection and what is just simply life happening. And like Glenn says, you just go with it. You accept it, and you just go with it. So no, I don't deal with fear of rejection anymore. It happens. People walk away.
Yeah.
But then people come into your life too.
Right.
So. And I think we can fall into the pit of depression and despair over people rejecting or what we perceive as rejection when we're not mindful of the also very true fact that other people can and do come into your life.
Yeah.
And you can have even better with new people that come along or with the people that haven't left you, that are still there and have hung in there, than constantly mourning the loss of people that aren't there anymore. So
all right,
that's so good.
Yeah, it's really good.
Can I share something real quick that plays into this? So this happened while the show was going on. I've been learning a little bit more about algorithms on social media, and I hadn't really seen any posts from my dad or my mom, and so I went to find my dad's page, and I think he might have unfriended me.
What?
Well, we're not friends, and we were.
Didn't you unfriend him back in the day?
But I refriended him after we had our no contact situation and got to talk, and hash things out.
Interesting.
So I was like, huh, okay. And then my mom, I went to go find her like a month or two back and realized that we weren't friends. And I think I forgot to refriend her after just needing to disconnect from them for a handful of months and deal with my own crap. Now this back in the day would have sent me in a tailspin.
Yeah.
So I was sitting here thinking while y'all were talking, sorry, I got a little distracted.
Okay. That's all right.
And I was like, well, I could choose to be direct and be like, hey, I noticed we're not friends anymore. Is there a reason you unfriended me, or, what's going on?
Yeah.
And then with my mom saying, I sent you a friend request a couple weeks back with a message saying, oh my gosh, I didn't realize I didn't refriend you. And I was apologetic, but she hasn't, I guess, even seen it, or she's ignoring it. Now she's not on Facebook a lot at all. My dad is on Facebook all the time.
Yeah.
But I thought, okay, I can speak up and say something or just let it go.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think I'm just going to let it go. But even having the moment to stop and think about it and not overreact like I used to, and not let it be this gut punch and automatically assume the worst. Like they hate me. They don't support me. They don't encourage me. They don't think about me. They don't want to see me. They don't want to interact with, all of this ongoing onslaught of negative thoughts.
Right.
So it's just so nice to be in another place where I feel comfortable enough to ask what's happening, directly.
Yeah.
And even if I get a bad response, that'd be fine, or just to not do anything about it and just mosey along.
You have the power, wouldn't you say that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's,
and I think I used to not realize that.
Yeah.
I was at the mercy of my thought life.
Yeah.
Like it was almost like I had a subconscious belief that you can't do anything about thoughts. They're just going to come, and you have to like ride out the storm until you crap your pants.
I'm
like,
not laughing.
When you crap your pants. I know.
I'm not laughing because it's not true. I'm laughing because
it is true.
Yeah. That's true.
So that's fascinating to me.
Yeah,
that I literally had this inner belief that I just was at the mercy of my thoughts, these negative thoughts, and ruminating,
Sure.
And to be on the other side of that, not that it's completely gone, but it's gone enough to where I see a huge difference.
Yeah.
That's just crazy.
Thank you, Jen, for adding that. What do you think, Glenn? Ghost from rejection.
I think we all carry them. I do, but this one's not big. It doesn't like it doesn't play it's not a big ghost deal, so to speak, because rejection's okay. Now, if you said, how does that compare with the next ghost underneath it? Assumptions to my mind is huge, whereas rejection is minimal for me.
Okay.
So.
Well, why don't you answer first on the next one then? Ghost from assumptions.
Oh yeah, right. How long you got?
20 minutes.
I'm trying. I better be quick then. In summary, the biggest one, the biggest ghost is the assumption that I used to make when I thought something I knew was right. I made the assumption that everybody else must be wrong. What a kick in the head that is.
Sure.
So that's the big one that comes to mind. That is huge. I mean, if I carry that, I was just so like that.
Yeah. Yep.
It's cringeworthy in the extreme, but true. So that one is big, and I'm very mindful of it.
Yeah.
Even those ghosts come up, and if I tend to want to think or be that way, be antagonistic or make negative comment, I stop myself because I realise it's not the way to go. Tell the truth, but don't shove someone else down a hole out of a place of righteousness.
That's right. Oh my gosh, that's a big one. I'll back you up on that too, because it's. I do agree that it's a big one, and I have done it. I have done it with people groups. I've done it with other quote unquote believers. I've done it with myself. Just assuming all the time. And of course, my dad used to say, you know what happens when you assumption? It makes an ass out of you and umption. the word assume, it makes an ass out of you and me. And that is true. It can do that. Now, fortunately, I'm in a place where I try not to make assumptions about anyone or anything. I am a very direct person, thankfully, and if I really need to know something, I'll go directly to the person and ask questions to try to ascertain, what's going on, rather than me assuming. But this has very much been a plague or a blight on my life in the past, especially with people groups. You assume that all people are the same. They have the same beliefs. If they're in this group, then of course this is what they think and believe. And this isn't a real good reason for me but people make assumptions of me all the time. I mean, it's been done to me as well, but that doesn't mean I should do it. Again, I've come to the place where I'm responsible for myself. I'm not responsible for groups. I'm not responsible for other individuals. I'm responsible for me. And I choose to work on not making assumptions. I've gotten way better at it, but in the past, my gosh, I mean, if we had the time, I can tell several stories where I made an assumption about someone or something or some group, just later to find out that I was wrong. And I'm okay to admit that I'm wrong. It just is a difficult place to be in when you're making assumptions and you end up paying the price for it. Nez, Ghost from Assumptions.
Oh my goodness. I still have to deal with that. When you're feeling prideful, when you think you know all about somebody or something or some group, and you think, oh, well, it's got to be this, and it isn't always what you think.
Yeah.
And having humility really deals well with getting rid of the temptation to assume.
Yep.
And if you really want to know, you can pray about it and ask the Lord to let you know if there's no other way for you to know, and God will tell you. God will let you know one way or the other.
Yeah.
And if you can research matter for yourself, do it.
Yeah.
And also ask yourself, do I really need to know what I'm either thinking that I know or that I'm, what's the priority here?
Yeah.
How much do I really need to know? How important is it?
Sure.
No, I still have to weigh things carefully sometimes. Sometimes it's easy to fall into, well, this person must feel this way but I've learned enough to know you never can tell. You can get sideswiped with a surprise from someone or something at any given time. So I'm trying to do better with the ghosts of assumption.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Bubba. Sorry, Bubba News just came in. Hi, Bubba.
No, that's okay. No, we're good. You say hello to whoever you want, Nez. Yeah, Bubba, welcome. Jen, you're last on this one this time. Ghost from Assumptions. What do you say? Jen, you're muted.
Oh, dagnabbit.
There you go.
I laughed, and then I said, how much time do you guys have?
15 minutes.
Oh, crap. I can't take up all 15.
We can go a little longer if everybody wants to.
I think with my catastrophizing and, assuming rejection.
Yeah.
Well, I think there were times where there was. I think there were other times that there might not have been, and I just assumed that it was rejection.
Right.
And I'll share a quick story with you guys. When I was like 3, maybe 4, and we lived in Louisiana, I woke up like a little bit after I had gone to bed or was put to bed. And my little brother hadn't been born yet. I was the youngest at that point. Mm-hmm. And I heard like clinking in the living room and like spoons hitting glass dishes. And I woke up, I got out of bed, I walked down the hallway, and there was a door at the end of the hallway that opened up into the kitchen and the dining room and like the foyer, however you say that. And the whole family was sitting down watching a James Bond movie and eating ice cream. Yep. And I can still feel the devastation. It's not as strong as it used to be, but with healing and stuff.
Yeah.
But I went back to my room and I crawled into bed and I cried and cried and cried. I felt so rejected. I felt left out. I felt like they didn't want me there, like it was purposefully done to me.
Yeah.
And it broke my little heart.
Yeah.
And I didn't tell, any my family, or, I didn't say anything until years later, probably my early teens.
Yeah.
And my mom was horrified. She was like, "Oh my gosh, you were younger, you needed to go to bed. We didn't do it on purpose."
Right.
But there's been things like that, but then assumptions that have been made
Sure.
that have sort of played into me believing certain things about myself and other people.
Yeah.
And I think it's so dangerous, and it's such a habit. I know for me, I have to really work at catching myself and remembering that I can ask questions to clarify instead of making assumptions. It's just some people in my life, when I go to clarify, some people really have issues with that.
Yeah.
And they react badly and get defensive. And it's like, I'm just trying to clarify so I don't take it the wrong way and be quote unquote too sensitive.
Right.
But I guess me even asking for clarification is too sensitive.
Right.
So I just am like, okay, this isn't a safe person.
No.
I can still love them and accept them where they're at. But I really, truly want to spend my time being in relationships with people that are working on themselves and are trying not to make assumptions, and that are care about the relationship enough to be direct.
Yep.
And
It's a gift.
Talk about it. Yeah.
And to me, being direct is a gift.
Yeah. But I was doing it too. I think my family of origin, we all have a very bad habit of assuming things.
Yeah.
And not going to get the information from the horse's mouth.
Yeah.
And then allowing the assumptions to dictate feelings and opinions, and it's just a mess,
I would agree.
and it's just not good. It's not good for relationships.
Thanks, Jen. That's good. All right. Last one on this list is Ghost from Faith and Beliefs. Now, I could spend a lot of time answering this one. I'll go first, and I'll purposefully keep it short and say, yeah, I have a lot of ghosts. A lot of it is, I don't walk around with regret, but knowing that I have in the past believed things that affected the way I viewed other people. And you hear me complain about this all the time because I'm on the other side of it, and I have been able to see that so many people in the quote unquote Christian world, this is a big one for people. They hold tightly to their own faith and they question other people's faith. Oh, well, if you turned away from this, you were never a believer to begin with. That's the biggest thing I hear atheists say as a criticism of Christianity. And you know what? They're absolutely right. There are people that had been Christians and then now they're atheists, and they talk about this part, the idea that what they've heard from other believers is that, well, you never really believed in the first place, otherwise you wouldn't have walked away from your faith. And it's the most ridiculous thing ever. These people claim that they did believe. Faith isn't this static thing that just stays the same all the time. At least it doesn't seem like it to me. I believe different things than I did 5 years ago. So my beliefs have changed. It doesn't mean I'm bereft of all belief. It means that they have changed. And I think that's part of growth. It's part of maturity. But the ghosts for me are assumptions. It ties into the one above, the making assumptions about people when I find out what they believe. I mean, I used to make assumptions about atheists. I put them all in the same bin, and that was wrong. Well, they do the same thing to us. Well, that doesn't make it right. They look at all believers as the same. Well, you're all bigoted, hateful, convicting bastards. And we're not all that way. But they do have a point, because there's a lot of them that are. And they're people. We're all people. Whatever we believe, whatever religion we ascribe to, or no religion, we're people. We have our own beliefs and our own faith. They may be wrong. They may be wrong to someone else, but your beliefs are your own. They belong to you. And my
Yeah.
ghosts are my ghosts. I have plenty of ghosts in this category, but fortunately, I'm healing from them and growing and changing. And I will never allow my faith or beliefs to prevent me from having a relationship with anyone, especially when other people judge me for who I call a friend. I'm not doing that. And I've stood up for that. And I have lost some things because of that, because I'm a loyal person. And just because someone else doesn't believe like another group of people believes, I'm not going to throw a friend under the bus. I'm not doing that, whether they have beliefs or they don't have beliefs. So yeah, I can, there probably could write a show about this one question. So I have them. They're mine. I'm working through it. Let's ask Nez. Ghost from Faith and Beliefs. What do you have to say about this one, Nez?
I'd say I've had struggles with that before, but like you brought up, your beliefs and what you learn, that can change as you learn and grow.
Yeah.
So I'm not struggling with things from the past now.
Right.
I'm just open to learn and grow and change as I go. So
good.
Short but sweet answer there.
Thank you. Thank you. Jen, Ghost from Faith and Beliefs.
Whew. I really like what y'all shared. I would say ditto. I would just also add that for me, guilt and shame attached to religion has really plagued me a lot, a big part of my life.
Sure.
Trying to be perfect, have the perfect walk, not being gracious toward my own humanness.
Oh.
And some of that is from not all experiences with the church, but some, of churchgoers being very judgmental or ungracious. Is that a word?
Yeah.
And then me taking that to mean that that's exactly what I was.
Yeah.
And then beating myself up. That was a big thing.
Yeah.
But like what you had said, Jason, made me think about my own revelations about how faith and our relationship with God, it is personal.
Yeah.
And I think it's very unique too. I think there's a lot of similarities that people have, but because our journeys and our own personhood is so unique, I think that plays into and adds to the uniqueness of the relationship that you have with God.
Yeah.
And that it's good to hold strong to that and not allow other people to define it for you.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
But you to figure out what it means to you and what that is,
Yep. Beautiful. Well said. Glenn, Ghost from Faith and Belief. And before you begin, we'll say hello to Paradox, who popped in the chat. We're glad that you're here. Thanks for stopping by. Go ahead, Glenn. Ghost from Faith and Beliefs.
Okay, sure. I do have something to say, but before that, I'm going to politely ask that we don't go to the next part of the write-up, and I will incorporate it in another part, because I think here is a lot's been revealed. It's taken the time, and I think now it's going to be superfluous to tonight's show to continue, because we won't really get to where we need to get with that. That
sounds great. No problem.
Okay, well, ghosts and beliefs are from faith and belief. It doesn't apply to me, but I want to relate a story from when I had a conversation down at the church last week, and a subsequent conversation.
All right.
Is that when I made contact with one of the people there, and I said why I was here, etc., and that I was an atheist, I almost felt this sort of this sigh of what's coming here sort of thing.
Yeah.
So immediately I felt that. I said, I'm not here as an antagonist. And you could almost feel the stress level for any go down to the ground sort of thing.
It's good that you said that, Glenn.
But I was thinking why. So here's the rub. In a subsequent conversation with this person, it was revealed that one of their family members is an atheist, but is a total bigot, angry, the angry atheist syndrome. And I thought, no wonder this person was reacting, because it had someone right close to them is like this, and it's hard. He said it's incredibly difficult to take. You really have to distance yourself from people like that. And I thought, well, this works. It's not just Christians that are bigoted. It's atheists.
Mm-hmm.
The bigotry is not confined to Christians.
No.
That's for sure.
That's true.
So that sort of explained to me just how, what's the word? I'm trying to think of it. How easy it is for people to be angry and, derogatory. But yet it seems to be a lot more difficult to be kind and generous and accepting. I don't know why that is. It just doesn't make sense to me, but I don't know. It's one for the books.
Yeah, it definitely is.
Anyway, thanks.
Thank you, Glenn. So there was one more at the end. Glenn put in ghost from any other places. Does anyone want to share any other ghosts that they can think of right now? If not, we'll go ahead and end tonight's broadcast. Then we have more to look forward to. As Glenn said, we had more in the write-up, but he's going to incorporate that into the next one, which he does a really good job with. So you can all rest assured that even though I read this part at the beginning, I'm not sure we always anticipate when we have several questions like this how long it can go. But I wouldn't change a thing, because people answer and they take as much time as they need to. And these are some really great questions. So putting it to the panel, ghost from any other place. Can you guys think of anything that you want to discuss before we say goodnight? I just thought of ghosts of past failures, and this is a big thing, because Jen had said earlier in the broadcast, what's the phrase that you learned about failure?
Oh, I said, oh crud. Well, hold on, let me think of it.
It's not failure, it's learning. Something like that.
Yeah, there is no failure. There's only winning or learning.
Winning or learning. Yeah, I think that's incredibly
or
profound.
Succeeding and learning, one of the two.
Yeah,
well, maybe it's winning and learning.
Winning and learning, yeah. And Jen and I were talking about this earlier, and I had mentioned when Glenn had shared with me about when I was going through my divorce, and I was talking about, I failed at marriage, and he kind of sternly reprimanded me, and I'm glad he did, because the way he phrased it, I don't remember exactly how he said it, but he's basically saying, you didn't fail anything. I'm still alive. I can learn from what I would consider my mistakes, and I have done that. So I look at that first marriage not as a failure, as looking at a time that I learned a lot to prepare me for what was coming next. And it forever changed the way I look at it. I don't say I fail at anything anymore. So when Jen went to this weekend, and that was one of the things they talked about, I just thought that was huge, the timing of all of that. We don't fail at things. There are ways that we can look at, if we're looking at it the right way, it could be a time of learning something that prepares us for whatever's coming next. And that's the way I choose to look at it. And it is revolutionized the way I look at my past failures. But to me, for a long time, my past failures were the biggest ghost that I had, bigger than any other of the other ones mentioned, because I felt like I had messed so many things up, and I'm always having to learn. And part of that was some things I did to myself, mentioning the self-sabotage, and other things people did to me, and institutions did to me. This is not a friendly place, this world we live in, and there are good things in it. I have to keep reminding myself of that. Things happen to people. There are good people that have deaths in the family and they can't find a good job. I certainly have struggled with that. It's not because I'm a jerk. It's because it's a hard place to live and things are tough. But if I look at everything as a failure, I'm never going to get over this. I can look at past failures and stay in a stuck place for my entire life. And some people do that. You meet old people, they're just bitter and angry and you don't have a conversation with them. And is this because you failed so many times? You just know that people, if they're carrying around bitterness and anger, they're holding grudges against something someone else did. They're being in a victim place. And I don't want to be in that place. Things happen to people. They do. It's all on how you look at it. Anyone want to comment on that or have any other comments? Goes from any other place.
I'm thinking that anyone imagine if you hadn't had the experiences of the words that have been used and discussed tonight, where would you be? You'd be nowhere.
Yeah.
That's bottom line,
That's true.
isn't it?
That's true. Yeah. Thanks, Glenn. Anyone else? All right. We all have ghosts and they are not going away. Most people tend to act out patterns of behavior and have no idea why they do so, let alone ever consider what has led to such behaviors. All right. And then I'll skip down the bottom and read the quote because I think it's a good one. For to be free is not merely to cast off one's chains, but to live in a way that respects and enhances the freedom of others. Okay. I see now that was in relation to the part that we didn't talk about. So, sorry about that. But we will talk more about the rest of this, incorporated into next week's write-up. And this has been great. I didn't know when I first saw these questions that it would spread out over the 2 hours, but it certainly did. And I think Glenn's decision to devote the time to it that the next section requires is better to put off until next week. All right. So thank you, everyone, for being here tonight. We appreciate you. Thanks for stopping by. And to everyone who is listening to the broadcast but is not here in the chat, we appreciate you just as much. We just try to encourage people to stop in the chat and just have conversations. Because the people that do come to the chat, they're wonderful, amazing people, and we're grateful for all of them. But we're grateful for you too for taking the time to listen. If you like anything of what we're doing here on True Story Live, we just ask that you would let other people know about it. Please give us a like if you haven't already. That tells the algorithm that there's something good about what we're doing here, and I guess I don't need external validation, but I definitely would like to be able to reach more people. And so that would be my motivation for that. But thank you for tonight. And I hope everyone has a good week. And please join us next Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So I'll say goodnight for now. Jen, take a minute to say goodnight to people.
Absolutely. You guys, this was a great write-up and a really wonderful show. And when I had read the write-up and went through the questions, I kind of was like, I don't know the answer. But it's so interesting when we get on the show and start talking, it just comes to mind.
Yeah.
Which I like. I'd rather have that happen than plan ahead what I'm going to answer.
Yeah, that's true.
But this is great. The conversation was great. And everybody in the chat, we just love that you guys hang out with each other and talk and share your thoughts and opinions on what we're talking about. It's just wonderful. Yep. We hope you have a wonderful week. And it's the first week of August. Holy crap.
Yeah. Wow.
We could celebrate it. It's hot as mess down here in South Carolina.
Yeah,
I don't know if it's
sure
hot where you guys are, but hope you have a good week. And we really look forward to seeing you guys next Sunday. Thanks for joining us. Night.
Thanks, Jen. Glenn, take a minute to say goodbye. If you have any closing comments, please make them.
Sure. I'll say good night, good afternoon, whatever.
Yep.
And a quick heads up on next week's broadcast. The theme is going to be the things we say, the things we don't say, and the effect that has upon ourselves. So I think it's going to be a logical extension of what's been said tonight. So
perfect.
Looking forward to writing it.
All right.
Thanks.
All right. Last but certainly not least, Nez, if you could say goodbye to the peoples and close us down. If you have any closing comments about tonight's broadcast or anything else, please make them.
Thank you so much. What a great conversation. Glenn kills it again with another epic
Yep.
write-up. And
It's
I can't wait to continue the conversation next Sunday.
Mhm.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight. Everybody who participated in the chat, even if you were just lurking, thank you for being here. And certainly thank you to everyone who watches the replay. And please, kindly, if you'd take a moment to share the stream out on your social media, if you're so inclined. And if ever you have any questions or suggestions on what you'd like to see us talk about here on TSL, reach out to us and one of us will certainly reach right back.
Yep.
On a side note, the dramatic reading of Shawshank Redemption will be going on at my friend Scully's channel, Scully's House of Thrillers. And that will be going on Saturday night, I believe, at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Just double check with Scully's House of Thrillers so you know when that's going to happen. Don't take my word for it, just double check. But I'm looking forward to it. I'm going to be playing the part of Warden Norton, and we've got some other good friends of the channel here that will be involved as well. So this should be a good time. I can't wait until next Sunday. I hope you will join us. Have a beautiful, blessed week. Everybody have a great rest of the day or rest of the evening. And God willing, we'll see you right here at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time next Sunday here on True Story Live. Good night, everybody.